Hey, we made it to Friday again. This morning I put together a Substack detailing all the astrological dates that are really important in closing out the year. To be honest with you, I'm sure that we are all like kind of like just different versions of ourselves that than as compared to like the beginning of 2025. Um, 2025 has been this radical shift in the collective, and it's like on so many different paradigms that if you were to envision your life as a really long table and you had, let's say, 10 seats at it, the same people that were sitting at the table at the beginning of the year are no longer there, and there's a lot of new butts in those seats. That's all I got to say about that. But what I really love about December is that there's a lot of really sweet opportunities to close chapters, because where we are going, starting like literally the end of, I would say, January into February and then through like July of next year, we are going through this like fast forward shift. And it's not like time moves faster. It's not that. It's just that we completely, there's like no room to pivot anymore. You're just like, you're in. It's almost like you're in the driver's seat, you're zipped in and you're pressing the pedal, and that's what it's going to feel like. And so any baggage that doesn't need to come with you, I spell out how to leave it behind in this article, so check it out. That's not why I'm here. I'm doing a series of videos where I talk about the kind of offerings that I have on my website, the readings that I do. And today I'm talking about past lives. Now, it's by far not one of my most booked readings, just because, a lot of people aren't really sure that they want to dive into it. They're not really sure like how it applies to them quite literally. I think that the psychic mediumship is my most popular. And then also spirit guides is really popular as well, because, growing up, we're all raised with like little guardian angels and we believe that they're all around us. And that is half true. They're not usually angels, but that's for another reading. That's for another video. But past lives are actually, I would say, more important, and it's more of a creative reading than anything. And even though it's not my most booked one, it's probably my favorite out of all of them. Many moons ago, I want to say maybe back between 2012 to 2014-ish, I had produced this show with Lifetime Movie Network called Past Lives when I worked as a television producer. And it was with this amazing, talented past life regression hypnotherapist named Damien Bertrand. And together we met with like over 80 some people, and I watched him regress them, like micro regress them, until we narrowed it down to like 18 specific people and stories. And across the scope of, I want to say, maybe 3 to 6 episodes, I can't remember, we told the stories of people who in their current lives were absolutely stuck. It felt like they were hitting a wall, or they were at constant forks in the road and didn't have the competence nor the confidence to make the decisions they needed to make to enrich their lives. Or they had this wild karma that kept happening over and over and over in their lives. And, family couldn't fix it, friends couldn't fix it, doctors couldn't fix it, therapists couldn't work on it. A lot of it manifested physically, a lot of it manifested psychologically. And so their last stop was to do past life hypnotherapy regression. And essentially what came forward was all of the lives that stepped forward would explain the themes that happened in those lives, that would explain where they were at in their current life. And it's one of the reasons why I think that this reading is so enriching, because if you are curious or kind of stuck on your purpose, or if you need to pivot but don't know if it's going to benefit you, and I'm not talking financially, I'm talking spiritually, if you're at an impasse, I often think that it's helpful, and it's a lot like therapy, but it's helpful to like take a look at where you've been before. What patterns have you repeated in past lives that need to come to an end? And is this life the one to do it in? Who have you repeated lives with? Who is your soul family? And then lastly, like, what is the takeaway? Because, when you speak to a really young person, they're kind of like, wow, like, look at the world. And then when you speak to an older person, they have a lot more sage advice. They have a lot more, hopefully, they have a lot more wisdom. If they don't, then they get to do it all over again in the next life, I'll tell you that. But you have so much hindsight when you're looking at lives in, with 2020 vision. And that's a lot like what past lives are, is, you're brought there for a purpose, and whether you meet it or not is up to you. And when you do a past life reading, I bring forward 3 lives that are pertinent to whatever you're learning in this one, because not every life has anything to do with like your current one. And we take a look at them, and we look at the patterns, we look at the people, we look at the lessons, we look at the synchronicities too. And for example, in my past lives, I know that, every time I've been a masculine, I've been so emotionally stagnated. Like every single life as a masculine, it's almost like I can't pull my shit together. And then when I come through as a feminine, I am this powerful, train, this advocate for those without voices. I'm not afraid to speak up. I'm not afraid to step forward. And I'm excited because in this life, it feels very similar. It feels like one of the most powerful ones that I've had so far. But then I look at like some of the co-occurrences that happen in those past lives. And regardless of whether I was a masculine or feminine, I've lost a brother in every single life. And I'll tell you, it's been a journey to figure out like how I heal that wound. How do I stop losing a sibling who I love a lot in every single life? How do I take that and make it into empowerment, which I feel like is kind of what I'm doing in this one. Anyway, I digress. We all have purposes, and we all have this, across all of our lives, we all have this story arc, this lesson that we're supposed to be learning. And, as we move through each life and we learn the lesson as we go, and let's just say, for me, I know that my story arc is providing a conduit to people's healing, providing a bridge to, and being an avatar to help people understand how to heal. The closer I get to that, the more I come into my purpose and the more aligned I have. And usually the more in alignment you are, the more challenges you face, which is kind of interesting, but it's almost like testing your mettle in a way. And so that is what I have learned, in studying past lives in general. But a lot of times we will come back in the same soul families, and let's say, a lot of times like your grandmother could be your sister, or this is kind of gross, but like your sibling can be your partner in another life. It just is what it is. Like we are, we operate in soul families. We change genders, we change nationalities or race. Sometimes we change species, which is a whole other topic and for another video. But at the end of the day, we are learning something very specific, and we come into each life curious and open, whether it is a life of suffering or a life of relief where we get to relax a little bit and catch our breath in between lives. But I thought it was really pertinent to have that offering. And so for now, that is the reading that I have with past lives. That is what you expect when you come in and sit with me. Now for next year, ta-da, speaking of Damon Bertrand, he is going to be my mentor, and I'm going to get my certification with past life regression hypnotherapy, because I think it's so much more effective when you see it for yourself and I help energetically walk you through your life instead of you hearing it from me. I've always felt like it's more impactful when you experience it for yourself. And again, it's another way that I can help my clients tether to their intuition. So keep a lookout, because that's something I'm going to be offering probably, I'd say early spring. But that said, it's just, like I said, past lives is something that's like hard to grasp. It's a hard concept to grasp, but it's so rewarding. And it's one of my favorite readings I have out of all of them.